The goal of this video is not to sell you on the Galaxy Z Fold 6. In fact, I want to have a little talk first because a $100 price increase may not seem like much, but this is already an expensive phone. Like going up to $1899 for a foldable phone, you have to really love it. Like you have to really think it's going to make your life better over everything else that's out there. Because at the end of the day, like when you break the numbers down, like you could technically get a Galaxy S24, a Tab S9, Galaxy Buds 3 for around the same price, or you could do something like get the Galaxy S24 Ultra so you have that big display, buy a Galaxy Watch 7 and buy the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro for $50 cheaper. And this does not include any trade-ins whatsoever. So I think for people out there who are buying this device, they really fall into two specific camps. They're just loaded and have money to spend, or they're an enthusiast like me and probably a lot of you watching this video and just love the idea of a foldable device. Because this year's updates are super minor in terms of internal hardware, but the actual physical differences on the Z Fold 6 feel better than the Z Fold 5. It's lighter in the hand, for one, and you notice it if you're holding them together. It's thinner. It feels squared off, more like the Galaxy S24 Ultra. The display on the front is a little bit bigger. It's 6.3 inches compared to 6.2. Now this is only 0.1 inch, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but it does make a difference when you're typing on this thing. I still feel like it's a little bit too narrow. I think 0.1 inch more, it would be perfect, but it's a lot more enjoyable to type on than the previous Galaxy Z Fold 5. I still personally think the cover display on the OnePlus Open is the right size, but this is a step in the right direction. Besides that, the rest of the phone is pretty much identical. You have the big camera bump on the back. Yes, it still rocks like crazy when it's on the table. The edges are all aluminum. The big difference though comes down to the frosted look on the new Z Fold 6 compared to a glossy one on the Z Fold 5. A little bit more slippery in the hand, but they both pretty much feel the same when you're holding it. Actually, I would say this feels more comfortable because the edges are not squared off, so it doesn't dig into your palm. But again, I'm like super nitpicking here. The other thing I see going around is everyone calling the new Z Fold 6 dust resistant. It is not dust resistant. It's true, it's IP48 instead of IPX8, but that 4 just means it can withstand debris that's over a millimeter. A lot of dust is smaller than a millimeter, so it can technically still get into the phone. Now on the cover screen, you do have a brighter display on the Z Fold 6. It can now get up to 2600 nits of peak brightness compared to 1750. So let me remind you, peak brightness, not everyday brightness. Now that SDR brightness will go up with it, but peak brightness means in small little windows. So if you're watching HDR content, let's see, you're looking at a picture or video of the sun, that will be brighter in that little window compared to the same HDR content on the Z Fold 5. 10 megapixel webcam, it's okay. Nothing has really changed. It's literally identical. I tested some photos and they look pretty much the same. All right, so right now you're looking at the front-facing cameras on the Galaxy Z Fold 5 and the Galaxy Z Fold 6. They should look pretty much identical. I mean, these are pretty much the same camera at the end of the day, but maybe there's a little bit of different processing. I don't know. Either way, you guys let me know how it looks, and of course, how do the microphones sound. But the overall big change comes down to the internal display. It's still 7.6 inches, but it's wider now because they changed the aspect ratio to adapt to the bigger cover screen. They had to make it a little bit wider. And yes, the black bars are slightly bigger, but you still get more screen real estate watching content than you do with any normal traditional phone. The internal displays also have the crease. It's just as big as the previous one. I'm not seeing a difference there. It's identical. The Flip 6 though, on the other hand, the crease is a little bit smaller, but on the Fold 6, it's pretty much the same as the Z Fold 5. Now there's one thing I did notice. When I was watching content, everything looked a lot more vibrant on the Z Fold 5, even though both devices were on the Vivid profile. But if you go into the software, and I think this is just based on this version of One UI, there's now an advanced slider which allows you to increase the contrast of the vivid profile to make it even more saturated. You can't do this on the Z Fold 5. You can only do it on the Z Fold 6. Now, they're probably going to update the Z Fold 5 in a future software update to have that slider, but I just wanted to let you know because it was throwing me off. The other little software change is under the sound settings. The equalization descriptions are a bit different. So on the previous Z Fold 5, they're done based on genres with the custom option. You still have the custom option on the Z Fold 6, but instead of using genres, they're more descriptive. Again, this is probably going to be changed with a future update. The one area where I think Samsung kind of missed was making the internal display very similar to the OnePlus Open. The one thing that the OnePlus Open does really, really well is reduce reflections. The type of coating they're using on the OnePlus Open is just much better. Like, obviously you're still going to get reflections, but the material they're using just really reduces it. And what you get with that is a more matte-like experience. It doesn't look as vibrant, but outdoors it does make a difference. Again, other little changes come down to polishing. So for example, the bezels on the internal display are now more of a matte look, whereas the bezels on the previous Z Fold 5 are glossy and they kind of blend into the design rather than separate the display. But here's the thing, the software experience on the Z Fold 6 pretty much feels identical to the Z Fold 5. There wasn't a situation, whether it was gaming or browsing the net or whatever it was, did I feel like the Z Fold 6 was faster. The hardware is just too good right now. The unfortunate part though is the battery life on the Z Fold 6 is just as bad as the Z Fold 5. Yes, you can get through the entire day, but you're just gonna make it. You know, like, it's not a strong battery like they have on the Ultra. The OnePlus Open also has much better battery life. It's the one area where I feel like the Fold 6 and previous Folds are really, really lacking. Also, the internal camera is not that great still. It's 4 megapixels and you do get trash photos, but this is not a big deal to me. You have so many other cameras that are better on the phone that you could utilize. Now, the back of the phone looks identical. The big change comes down to the rings around the camera layout. They're just a little bit thicker on the Z Fold 6. It's just to really make it look different than the Z Fold 5. But unfortunately, they didn't change much in terms of the camera. It's the exact same 50 megapixel camera that you get on the Z Fold 5. It's the exact same 10 megapixel with 3x zoom that you get on the Z Fold 5. The only difference is the 12 megapixel ultra wide lens. It's slightly different on the Z Fold 6. It's not significantly better. It's a minor update. Photos, wider photos, more so at night, just look a tiny bit better on the Z Fold 6 compared to the Z Fold 5, but it's really not enough to get excited about. Like, don't get me wrong, these cameras are decent. They're not the best, you know, like, they're not the best cameras on the phone. And I feel like they should be, considering the price point of this device. I understand a lot of people are probably buying it more for productivity, but this is a $1,900 smartphone. Like, it should have the best of everything. It can also shoot 4K video at 30 frames per second, or even more if you want to, but that's what I tested it at. And of course, it looks good during the day. It has pretty good optical image stabilization, but I feel like it's time for a better camera update. But look, everything else is unchanged. You know, it's the same sort of charging speeds, the same 4,400 milliamp hour battery. It really comes down to cosmetics. What you're getting with the Fold 6 is just a more refined user experience. It feels nicer to hold. It's a little bit lighter. The cover screen is bigger. It just makes it slightly easier to type on than the Z Fold 5. But I don't think it's enough. I think Samsung is getting a little lazy, you know, because at the end of the day, even with the OnePlus One, or OnePlus Open rather, being a year old, part of me still would rather just use this device. It nailed the cover screen and it nailed the internal screen. It's missing wireless charging and it has an ugly camera, but the form factor, at least to me, makes a lot more sense. I feel like if you have a Z Fold 3 and earlier, this is a great update. If you're coming from a Z Fold 4 or 5 and you don't mind the cover screen, then you're not going to see a lot of value there. And I feel like if you want the best bang for your buck, buying those 3 devices like the S24, Tab, and Galaxy Buds 3 for the exact same price will offer you a lot more value. Like, you have to really love foldable phones. Anyways, that wraps up my review of the Z Fold 6. I'll place links to both of these devices in the description down below, along with those combos I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.